Hi everyone, today I want to make a video about the stock of the pharma company Pfizer. The ticker is PFE. As usual, everything I say in the video is just my personal opinion. None of this is investment advice. What caught my attention about Pfizer is that there seems to be a disconnect between what the stock's been doing and what's happening kind of in reality with the company. Before we do that, a little bit background about Pfizer. So Pfizer is one of the largest pharma company or drug makers in the world. It's trading at about $36.7 a share, giving a market cap of $204 billion, enterprise value of $242 billion. They were started in 1847 by Charles Pfizer, who was a German chemist. And although he's long gone, the company, still bears his last name. And they expanded significantly in the Civil War period and in World War II because of the demand for disinfectants, painkillers, and penicillin. Fast forward that to modern day, they have a portfolio of many billion-dollar plus drugs, treating everything from autoimmune disease to helping you stop smoking, breast cancer. They also make Viagra, although that's not on this list. Now, you might be wondering, okay, great, Pfizer seems to be a successful pharma company, but, why does that matter right now? Who cares? And you'd be correct, because if you look at the top 50 best-selling drugs in the world, Pfizer shows up a fair number of times on this list at, number 2, number 5, 14, but it's by no means is it all Pfizer, right? There's a bunch of other great pharma companies making expensive life-saving medicine on here. Merck, Celgene, AbbVie, Roche. So why do we care about Pfizer? And so that brings me to my investment thesis, which doesn't have much to do with Pfizer's pipeline or current, lineup of successful drugs. It has more to do with the COVID vaccine. And I believe a lot of the upside from the vaccine that Pfizer has produced is not really priced into the stock. And I say this because it doesn't really take a genius to figure out that if you look at the stock, in November, they announced that finally they have very good results from their third stage clinical trials. They're saying that their their vaccine is 95% effective at preventing you from getting COVID. And the stock shot up because soon it was the FDA, the Europe version of the FDA, approved the drug and the drug is now being distributed, in the millions in the US and Europe and other countries. But recently the stock has given back all the gains from kind of that announcement. So basically it's back to the level it's trading at prior to us having this great news about the vaccine, and actually back to basically where Pfizer is trading at the beginning of the year before COVID. It was trading at the same level it is today. So that doesn't really make too much sense to me because the vaccine, even if you don't count the intangible benefits, the brand, the reputational benefits it brings to Pfizer down the road for many, many years, it also, there's, tangible benefits you can calculate today, right? So various governments around the world have agreed to purchase 500 million doses of Pfizer's vaccine. And Pfizer said they're expected to produce up to 1.3 billion doses next year. The vaccines cost about $20 per dose in the US, and maybe a little bit lower in other countries. And you need 2 doses, so that's $40 per person. But because they're partnered up with the German company BioNTech, I think in a 50-50 partnership, so you can just really, their revenue might be just half, so $20 per person. So if they have 500 million doses, $20 a dose, that's already $10 billion. Next year, 1.3 billion doses, multiply that by $20, $26 billion. That's significant revenue for a company that, historically prior to COVID had revenues about $50 billion, right? Now nobody knows kind of what their profit margin, so how much of it flows to the bottom line, because they keep that information, very secret. But I think you don't really need to know, because there is a company out there, another vaccine company that's kind of a one-trick pony called Moderna, mRNA, that is also, it's a competitor to Pfizer in the COVID vaccine. It came out a little bit later than the Pfizer vaccine, but it's another one that's been approved by the FDA. And that company is a one-trick pony. They don't have any other billion-dollar drugs out there. Their value mostly comes from the vaccine. And this company is being valued at a market cap of $50 billion. So you can kind of logically reason that the market is valuing the vaccine at $50 billion. And I kind of view the two vaccines as being somewhat equivalent. And because Pfizer also has a vaccine, but they're splitting it with BioNTech, so I think at least the Pfizer vaccine is worth $25 billion to Pfizer, right? Whatever the case, it's not worth zero, and that's what's kind of being implied right now by its stock price. And you might say, well, maybe all of this was already priced in prior to November with the announcement. And I mean, I don't really agree, because I was Googling kind of press releases, and even as far as back as May, Pfizer did say they're working on a vaccine, although I missed it, but they were just in first stage clinical trials. And, a lot of drugs that go into stage 1 clinical trials don't make it out of that trial. So it's hard to imagine most of the upside from the vaccine was priced in prior to their November announcement, unless there was a lot of insider information that got leaked, which I don't think there was. So if we do some rough math on Pfizer, it's trading at 36.7, and I think the vaccine's worth at least $25 billion to Pfizer. That should put its price at, say, around $42, not at the 36.7 that it's trading at today. So yeah, that's kind of my main thesis for Pfizer. If you look at, and here's why I like this idea right now, is because even if I am terribly wrong and all the upside was priced into the vaccine already, or the vaccine ends up being a failure, what you've purchased at the current valuation is still a pretty good pharmaceutical company. If you look at their peers like Merck, or Roche, Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, AbbVie. So all these drug companies, let's say, trade at basically about 20 to 30, about around 20 to 30 times their free cash flow. And Pfizer is at this level as well. In fact, they had a one-off item in Q3, which made their free cash flow look really bad for the quarter. But historically, they're actually a company that trades at, I would say, like mid-teen free cash flow multiples, which is, around the same area as, like, it's cheaper than Johnson & Johnson. It's about like around AbbVie or Roche, but definitely cheaper than Merck or Eli Lilly or GSK. So at worst, even if I'm wrong and the vaccine is basically written off and non-event, you've bought a very solid pharmaceutical company that's paying a 4.1% dividend, right? So it generates around $10 billion of cash a year, pays out $8 billion back to its shareholders. So it's a great company. So and this is my favorite type of investment, where there's kind of asymmetric payoffs, where if I'm wrong, the worst case is that it's not that bad. I bought a solid pharma company that is trading that's cheaper than S&P and kind of cheaper than many of its peers. But if I'm right, there's, I think, a lot of upside that's not being really priced in from the vaccine. So as usual, let's talk about some of the kind of the downside factors. Number one, so as with most pharma companies, one of the biggest threat is kind of the threat of what's called biosimilars or generics. So unlike kind of the patents on the drugs do expire, and it's important to kind of monitor when they expire, because once they do, they're under threat of other companies making biosimilars, and then and basically the drugs costs will come down significantly, and they're not able to maintain the same level of revenue. And luckily for Pfizer, I think their the drug that helps you stop smoking is expiring in 2020, the patent on it. But their most successful drug their patent's not expiring until 2026. So it's kind of important to monitor this. And it's kind of a rat race for the pharma companies to find new drugs to replace the revenue that's being lost because of generics. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic in this industry. Secondly, the other one I kind of talked about, so Moderna makes a competing vaccine to Pfizer. And if it turns out the Moderna vaccine is just way better than Pfizer, which I don't think is the case because they're both like 95% effective or something, then maybe Moderna's vaccine is going to become standard and the vaccine might not pan out for Pfizer, right? So that's the other threat. So that's kind of, so this video it's really just one thesis. To sum it up, it's just that the upside from the vaccine is not really priced into the stock, in my opinion. So let me know what your thoughts are, and thanks for watching.